Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Weekly Wildlife Wisdom. So far, I've been your host, Siri Yeti, and I apologize if my voice sounds pretty rough. I'm currently experiencing COVID, and so that's been awesome. Anyway, let's get into it. The first animal of the week being the golden toad, also known as the Monteverde toad, the Alahuel toad, or the orange toad. It is a extinct species of true toad that was once abundant in the Eflin cloud forest surrounding the city of Monteverde, Costa Rica. Here it lived near streams and pools of rainwater around 4,900 to 6,900 feet in elevation, feeding primarily upon insects, crustaceans, and other invertebrates. The golden toad is an extreme example of a sexually dimorphic amphibian, with males having possessed a very striking solid orange coloration compared to females, who had a pattern of black and scarlet, with scarlet blotches edged with yellow. Males have proportionally longer limbs and larger, more acute noses than females, while females had enlarged cranial crests above the level of the orbit, which is the eye socket, while the males had the crests that were much lower down the skull. The female was also on average significantly larger than males, ranging around 1 3/4 inches to 2 1/2 inches in length, compared to males at around 1 1/2 to 1 3/4 inches in length. The golden toad was a prolific and explosive breeder that would gather in large numbers from April to June around small temporary ponds and pools located throughout the forest. During this time, the competition between males for females was quite fierce, with males generally outnumbering females by around a ratio of 8 to 1. After mating, the female would lay around 200 to 400 eggs, which would hatch after around 5 days and fully metamorphosis from tadpole to toad after around 4 to 5 weeks. After being first described in 1966 by herpetologist J. Savage, a combination of deforestation, climate change resulting in lower rainfall, and an epidemic of cryptodiomycosis caused by pathogenic cryptid fungus Bacterocriton dendrobatius utterly decimated the amphibian species. The last known sighting of a golden toad was that of a solitary male in May of 1989. Next up is Barosaurus, which was a genus of giant, long-tailed, long-necked sauropod dinosaur which roamed throughout the Morrison Formation of North America throughout what is today Utah, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, and South Dakota during the Cretaceous to the Tithonian stages of the late Jurassic period, some 155 to 148 million years ago. The first Barosaurus remains were discovered in South Dakota by Miss E.R. Ellerman and excavated by Othniel Charles Marsh and John Belt Hatcher of Yale University in 1889. Only six-tailed vertebrae were recovered at the time, forming the type specimen which Marsh named Barosaurus lentus, from the classic Greek words baris, meaning heavy, and saurus, meaning lizard, and the Latin word lentus, meaning slow. The rest of the type specimen was left in the ground under the protection of the landowner, Mrs. Rachel Hatch, until it was collected 9 years later in 1898 by Marsh's assistant George Robier Wildman. These remains consist of vertebrae, ribs, and limb bones. In 1896, Marsh had placed Barosaurus in the Atlantosauridae family, and in 1898, he instead reclassified it as a diplodocid for the first time. Today, Barosaurus is known from a handful of specimens, with the most complete skeleton dubbed Gordo, currently residing in the Royal Ontario Museum of Toronto, Canada. Barosaurus was large, even by sauropod standards, averaging some 80 to 100 feet in length and 13 to 22 tons in weight, with some indications, such as the enormous vertebrae of the BYU 9024 specimen, suggesting a length of up to 150 feet and 66 tons in weight. Despite being closely related to the more famous Diplodocus, Barosaurus was proportioned differently. It had a longer neck, which was supported by an additional vertebrae, but it also had a shorter tail than most of the Diplodocids. This longer neck supports the theory that the numerous Jurassic sauropods were able to peacefully coexist with one another without contradicting each other's food sources by feeding from different levels of trees and plants throughout the environment. Barosaurus's long neck may have allowed it to feed on a more diverse range of fauna, flora. Aside from the lengthy proportions, Barosaurus somewhat resembled the average duplicated sauropod, with a narrow, flat, long skull and peg-like pencil teeth used for stripping plants of their leaves. Despite having a shorter tail, it is still theorized that Barosaurus could have used this tail to defend itself against predation by animals such as Allosaurus and Torvosaurus. Next up is Meganeura, which is a genus of extinct insect known as Griffinflies that were closely related to today's damselflies and dragonflies, and lived throughout what is now Europe during the late Carboniferous period, some 305 to 299 million years ago. The first fossils of Meganeura were uncovered from the coal measures of Commentary, France, in 1880, and 1885 French paleontologist Charles Brongniart described and named these specimens Meganeura, meaning large nerved, after the distinct network of veins on the insect's wings. Since then, several more well-preserved specimens have been uncovered, with three species currently being recognized as being Meganeura brongniarti, Meganeura monnii, and Meganeura viscera, with the biggest species sporting body lengths of nearly 20 inches over a 28-inch wingspan, and weighing nearly a pound, they rank amongst the largest invertebrates to ever fly. Like modern dragonflies, Meganeura sport enormous eyes relative to body size, and the spines in the tibia and tarsi sections of the legs would have functioned as a flying trap to capture prey at the time, such as amphibians, early reptiles, and other arthropods. It is generally considered the maximum potential size of an insect is dictated by how much oxygen is available for respiration. The oxygen content of our atmosphere today is around 21% of the total gases, but back in the Carboniferous period it was much higher, around 35%. Insects like Meganeura breathe through a system of tracheal tubes that carry oxygen directly to their internal tissues from the outside. A higher amount of oxygen in the atmosphere would supply a passive boost to these tissues with no effort on the part of the animal, allowing them for a larger growth. Falling oxygen levels after this period would mean that the giant insects and other arthropods simply did not have enough oxygen to maintain their large size, resulting in either the evolution of smaller forms or the outright extinction of the larger. Next up is Deinonychus, which is a genus of dromaeosaur theropod dinosaur that lived throughout North America, chiefly Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and possibly Maryland, during the early Cretaceous period, some 115 to 108 million years ago. The first remains of what is known to be Deinonychus were uncovered near the town of Billings, Montana in 1931 by paleontologist Wierum Brown, who uncovered them while excavating and preparing the remains of an ornithopod dinosaur, Tenotosaurus. Wierum dubbed the animal Daptosaurus agilis, but never got around to formally describing the animal. In the August of 1964, paleontologist John Ostrom led an expedition from Yale's Peabody Museum of Natural History which uncovered more than 1,000 bones belonging to at least 3 different individual Deinonychus. These were named Deinonychus from the Greek Dinos, meaning terrible, and Ionicus, meaning claw. Later studies by Ostrom and Grant Meyer analyzed their own material as well as Brown's Daptosaurus in detail and found them to be the same species. Since then, over a dozen additional specimens including a mother and a nest of her eggs, have been uncovered, with one species, that being Deinonychus anthropus, being recognized. Deinonychus could reach around 11 feet in length, a hip height of around 3 feet, and a weight around 160 pounds. The 16-inch long skull was equipped with powerful jaws lined with around 70 curved blade-like teeth. The tail was long and rigid and would have acted as a counterbalance when running. Additionally, Deinonychus possessed large hands with 3 claws on each forelimb. The first digit was shortest and the second was the longest. Each hind foot bore a sickle-shaped claw on the second digit, which was probably used during predation to stab into the prey's vital organs. In life, Deinonychus would have inhabited tropical and subtropical forests bordering on coastal deltas and inland lagoons, where they would have fed upon fish, reptiles, amphibians, small dinosaurs, and occasionally formed loose packs or mobs to bring down larger game such as sick, older, and infirm Tenotosaurus. Next up is the Columbian Mammoth, which is an extinct species of mammoth that inhabited the Americas from as far north as southern Canada to as far south as Costa Rica during the Pleistocene epoch from around 1 million years ago to around 10,500 years ago. The Columbian mammoth was first scientifically described in 1857 by naturalist Hugh Falconer, who named the species Elephas columbii after the explorer Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus is a horrible person, just to know. Standing some 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing upwards of 11 tons, the Columbian mammoth was not only amongst the largest mammoths, but the largest land mammals to ever walk the earth. It had long, curved tusks and 4 molars, which were replaced 6 times throughout the lifetime of the individual. It most likely used its tusk and trunk like modern elephants for manipulating objects, fighting, and foraging. Bones, hair, dung, and stomach contents have been discovered, but so far no fully preserved carcasses are known. Living in female-led herds of around 15 to 25 individuals, they would have traveled throughout the prairies, scrublands, and open woodlands of North and Central America, feeding upon sedges, grasses, fruits, and other foliage. They are noticeably absent from the Arctic regions of Canada and Alaska, which were instead inhabited by woolly mammoths. Where the ranges of the two species overlap, there is genetic evidence that suggests that they interbred. Additionally, genetic evidence shows that the pygmy mammoths of the Channel Islands of California evolved from Columbian mammoths. For a few thousand years prior to their extinction, Columbian mammoths also coexisted in North America with the first humans to inhabit the Americas, who hunted them for food, used their bones to make tools, and depicted them in their ancient art. The Columbian mammoths disappeared at the end of the Pleistocene period around 10,500 years ago, most likely a result of habitat loss caused by a combination of climate change and hunting by humans. Stålenhag, which is a genus of small to mid-sized Ammonite, an order of armored cephalopods which possess strongly coiled shells not unlike modern nautiloids. Glynoceros lived throughout what would become mainland Africa, Madagascar, Europe, and the Trans-Caspian region of the Middle East during the early Cretaceous period, some 113 to 100 million years ago. Measuring up to a foot in diameter, they are most notable for their easily distinguishable shells that generally feature a small umbiliculus attached to an acute venter and typically at some growth stage falconoid ribs that spring in pairs from the umbilical tubercles, which usually disappeared in the outer whorls. The soft body of the creature occupied the largest segments of the shell at the end of the coil, while the smaller, earlier segments were walled off, and the animal could maintain its buoyancy by filling them with gas. Thus, the smaller section of the coil would have floated above the larger sections, aiding the animal in efficiently moving throughout the water, such as to socialize, capture prey, or to avoid predators. In our extant animal of the week is the red fox, which is the largest and most widespread of the true foxes, with a native range that covers Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, as well as North America and Northern Africa, with additional invasive populations having been introduced to Australia and the Falkland Islands. While they prefer mixed vegetation communities, they are remarkably adaptable and utilize a wide range of habitats, including both wet and dry forests, scrubland, taiga, as well as prairie, desert, mountains, farmland, and urban areas, feeding upon equally a wide range of food such as rodents, rabbits, marsupials, insects, crustaceans, small birds, fruits, nuts, carrion, grasses, amphibians, small reptiles, and garbage. These foxes are themselves preyed upon by wolves, bears, coyotes, big cats, hyenas, and large birds of prey, typically standing between 14 and 20 inches at height at the shoulders, measuring some 2.5 to 4.5 feet in length, including the tail. They can range from 6 to 30 pounds in weight. The red fox is a decently sized but lightly built canine capable of running at upwards of 30 miles per hour in short bursts. The coloration of red foxes ranges from a pale yellowish red to a deep reddish brown on the upper parts and a white or ashy gray on the underside. The lower part of the legs is usually black, and the tail is usually white or has a white or a black tip. Two color variants commonly occur: cross foxes, which have reddish-brown fur with a black stripe down the back and across the shoulders, and the silver fox morph, which ranges from strong silver to entirely black all over the body. Red foxes can either be completely solitary, live in pairs, or even small family groups that share a joint territory. These such groups are typically formed around a dominant breeding pair, with subordinates generally consisting of the pair's young from previous years, but also occasionally siblings or even non-breeding parents, who act as helpers in hunting, predator defense, territory maintaining, and the rearing and breeding of the vixen's kits. Red foxes reproduce once a year in the spring, with mothers typically giving birth between 3 and 6 kits after a 49 to 58-day pregnancy. These babies will remain with their parents for roughly 6 to 7 months, reaching sexual maturity around 9 to 10 months of age, and under ideal conditions, a red fox may live upwards of 15 years. As always, take care to my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Have a great year.